During Thanksgiving prep, my stepmom said, "Help in the kitchen or leave. You're not eating otherwise." I was funding the groceries. I chose to leave and canceled the delivery orders, leaving them with empty pantries. I, 32M, never thought Thanksgiving would end with me driving away from my father's house, watching the rearview mirror as my phone lit up with increasingly desperate calls. But that's exactly what happened, and honestly, I don't regret a single decision I made that day. The tension had been building for months, maybe even years if I'm being honest with myself. My stepmom came into our lives when I was 24, just 2 years after Mom passed from cancer. Dad met her at some community event, and within 6 months, they were married. I tried to be supportive. I really did. Mom would have wanted me to make an effort to help Dad find happiness again. But my stepmom made it clear from the start that she saw me as a guest in what she now considered her home, not as Dad's son who grew up in that house. The problem was that Dad had never been great with money. Mom used to handle all the finances, and after she died, he sort of floundered. Bill payments were late. The mortgage went into arrears twice, and he racked up credit card debt trying to maintain the lifestyle Mom had carefully budgeted for them. When my stepmom moved in, she took over the finances, but things didn't really improve. If anything, they got worse because she liked expensive things and convinced Dad they deserved to live well. That's where I came in. About a year after their marriage, Dad called me up one evening sounding stressed. He explained they were having trouble making ends meet and asked if I could help out occasionally. I had just gotten a promotion at my tech job, and the pay was solid, so I agreed. What started as occasionally helping with their electric bill turned into a regular monthly contribution. Then it became me covering their car insurance. Then their property taxes. Then emergency repairs when the water heater burst. I didn't mind helping my dad. He raised me, supported me through college, and was there when Mom got sick. But my stepmom had this way of acting like my financial help was somehow her due, like I owed it to them. She never said thank you. Not once in 8 years. Instead, she'd make comments about how I should visit more, how I should be more involved in family events, how I wasn't showing proper respect for their home. Thanksgiving was supposed to be different this year. I had been seeing someone for about 6 months, and things were getting serious. I wanted her to meet my family, despite my reservations. I figured a holiday gathering would be the perfect neutral setting. Dad seemed excited when I told him, and even my stepmom responded positively, saying she'd love to meet the woman who finally got me to settle down. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Dad called with bad news. Money was tight again, tighter than usual. Some unexpected medical bills had come up, and they were worried about being able to afford Thanksgiving dinner. He sounded genuinely distressed, embarrassed to be asking again. I told him not to worry about it, that I'd handle the groceries for Thanksgiving. I wanted it to be nice anyway, since my girlfriend would be there. I didn't just order basic supplies. I went all out. I arranged for delivery from 3 different specialty stores to make sure we'd have everything needed for a proper feast. Prime rib roast, fresh seafood for appetizers, expensive wines, artisanal breads, imported cheeses, fresh herbs, organic vegetables, fancy desserts from that bakery my stepmom always talked about wanting to try. The total came to just over $1,800. I figured it was worth it for a special family gathering. The deliveries were scheduled for the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. I had taken that week off work and drove down Tuesday evening, about 3 hours from where I lived. My girlfriend was flying in Wednesday afternoon and would meet me at Dad's house. I was actually feeling optimistic about the whole thing. When I arrived Tuesday night, the atmosphere was already strained. My stepmom answered the door and gave me a tight smile, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. She informed me that I'd be sleeping in the guest room, which was fine, except the guest room was also being used as storage and was cluttered with her craft supplies. Dad gave me an apologetic look, but didn't say anything. Wednesday morning, I woke up early and made coffee. Dad and I had a decent conversation, catching up on work and life. He seemed tired, older than I remembered from my last visit 2 months ago. We were talking about maybe going fishing in the spring when my stepmom came downstairs, already dressed and made up despite it being barely 7 in the morning. She looked at me sitting at the kitchen table and asked why I wasn't helping prepare for tomorrow. I explained that the groceries I'd ordered would be arriving throughout the day, and once they came, I'd be happy to help with any prep work. She frowned and said something about how family should be more involved, not just throwing money at things. I let it slide. Dad changed the subject. The first delivery arrived around 10. 2 large boxes of premium ingredients, specialty items, the imported cheese selection. I helped bring everything in and started unpacking. My stepmom came into the kitchen and immediately began criticizing my choices. The cheese was too fancy. Nobody would appreciate it. Why did I get prosciutto when ham was cheaper? The organic vegetables were a waste of money when regular ones were fine. On and on. I kept my mouth shut and continued unpacking. Dad tried to mediate, saying everything looked wonderful, but my stepmom was on a roll. She started making comments about how I clearly had too much money to waste, how I didn't understand the value of $1, how if I had so much extra cash, I should be contributing more to their monthly expenses instead of splurging on unnecessary luxury items for one meal. The second delivery came around noon. More boxes, including the prime rib roast and the seafood. My stepmom saw the price sticker still on one of the packages, and her eyes went wide. She made a pointed comment about how that much money could have paid their water bill for 3 months. I reminded her, as calmly as I could, that she and Dad were the ones who told me they couldn't afford Thanksgiving dinner, so I was making sure we had a nice meal. She sniffed and walked away. My girlfriend texted that her flight had landed and she was getting a rental car. She'd be there in about an hour. I was relieved, hoping her presence would lighten the mood. I was wrong. The third delivery arrived around 1:30, just before my girlfriend pulled up. The bakery items, the wines, some fresh flowers I'd added to make the table look nice. My stepmom took one look at the flowers and asked why I was wasting money on something that would die in a week. I was putting the wines in the rack when my girlfriend knocked on the door. I introduced her to Dad first, and they hit it off immediately. She was warm and friendly, asking him about his woodworking hobby, admiring some of his pieces around the house. My stepmom came out, assessed my girlfriend with a single sweeping glance, and offered a limp handshake. The energy shifted. We all sat in the living room for a bit, making small talk. My girlfriend complimented the house, mentioned how nice it must be to have such a cozy family home. My stepmom launched into a monologue about how much work it took to maintain the house, how expensive everything was, how they barely managed to keep things together, with pointed looks in my direction. My girlfriend looked confused but stayed polite. Around 3, my stepmom announced it was time to start prep work for tomorrow. She looked directly at me and said that everyone needed to help in the kitchen, that this was a family event and family participated. I agreed and started to get up. She stopped me and said she needed to establish some ground rules first. She went on this speech about how her kitchen had certain standards, how things needed to be done her way, how she'd been planning this meal for weeks and had specific ideas. I pointed out that I'd provided all the food and was happy to help prepare it however she wanted. She said that was exactly the problem, that I'd overstepped by ordering everything without consulting her, that I'd made her feel like a guest in her own home, that I clearly didn't respect her authority as the woman of the house. I could feel my blood pressure rising, but tried to keep calm. My girlfriend reached over and squeezed my hand, a subtle show of support that seemed to irritate my stepmom even more. She made a comment about how young people today didn't understand family dynamics, how they didn't respect their elders, how I had never really accepted her as part of the family. Dad finally spoke up, telling her she was being unfair. She turned on him, snapping that he always took my side, that he prioritized his son over his wife, that she was tired of feeling like a second-class citizen in her own marriage. Dad looked hurt and shocked. He tried to argue, but she cut him off. Then she turned back to me. She said that if I wanted to eat Thanksgiving dinner in her home, I needed to follow her rules. That meant helping in the kitchen starting now and continuing through tomorrow. That meant no complaints, no suggestions, just doing what she told me to do. She said I needed to understand that just because I paid for the groceries didn't mean I got to waltz in and act like I owned the place. I felt something snap inside me. I stood up and asked her to clarify what she meant. She crossed her arms and repeated herself, adding that my girlfriend was welcome to help too, and if either of us had a problem with it, we could leave. She actually said those words. Help in the kitchen or leave, we wouldn't be eating otherwise. The room went silent. Dad looked mortified. My girlfriend looked between me and my stepmom with wide eyes. I felt this cold clarity wash over me, the kind you get when you suddenly see a situation for exactly what it is. I pulled out my phone and opened the app for the first grocery delivery service. I asked my stepmom one more time if she was serious, if she really wanted to give me an ultimatum in return for the $1,800 worth of food I'd provided. She lifted her chin and said that money didn't buy respect, and if I couldn't show her proper respect in her home, then yes, I should leave. I canceled the first order, requesting a full pickup and refund. The app confirmed the cancellation. My stepmom's expression shifted slightly, uncertainty creeping in. I opened the second delivery app and canceled that order too. Then the third. Within 2 minutes, I'd canceled everything and arranged for pickup of all items within the next 4 hours. My stepmom's face went white, then red. She asked what I thought I was doing. I told her exactly what she'd suggested. I was leaving, and I was taking my groceries with me. She started stammering that I was being ridiculous, that I was overreacting, that she didn't mean I had to actually leave. I replied that she'd been very clear with her ultimatum, and I was simply respecting her authority by removing myself and my belongings from her home. Dad jumped up, trying to mediate, asking me to calm down and talk this through. I turned to him and asked point blank if he was really okay with how his wife spoke to me, with how she'd just treated both me and my girlfriend. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. That told me everything I needed to know. I told my girlfriend we were leaving and started heading to the guest room to grab my bag. My stepmom followed, her voice rising, saying I was being a spoiled brat, that I was throwing a tantrum, that I couldn't just take the food back, they needed it for tomorrow. I kept packing. She said they'd invited people, extended family who were expecting Thanksgiving dinner. I reminded her that she'd invited those people knowing the only reason there would be food was because I'd paid for it. My girlfriend had already grabbed her things and was waiting by the front door. Dad was in the hallway, looking defeated, asking me to please reconsider, saying we could work this out. My stepmom was still going on about how disrespectful I was being, how ungrateful, how I'd always been a problem child who couldn't accept her. That last comment made Dad finally snap at her, telling her she'd gone too far. They started arguing with each other, and I used that moment to walk out. My girlfriend and I got into our cars. As I backed out of the driveway, I could see them standing in the doorway, still arguing. My phone started ringing before I even reached the end of the street. I didn't answer. My girlfriend followed me to a hotel about 20 minutes away. We checked in and sat in my room while my phone continued to blow up. Dad, my stepmom, an aunt, a cousin, even some number I didn't recognize. Texts started flooding in too. My stepmom apologizing, saying she didn't mean it, begging me to come back, saying she'd cancel the pickup of the groceries. Dad asking me to be the bigger person, to think about family. The aunt demanding to know what I'd done, saying I was ruining Thanksgiving for everyone. I turned my phone off and took my girlfriend out to a nice dinner. She asked if I was okay, and honestly, I felt lighter than I had in years. We talked about everything, and she told me she was proud of me for standing up for myself, that what my stepmom said was completely out of line. We ended up having a great evening. Thanksgiving morning, I turned my phone back on to check in with a few friends. 347 notifications. Messages, missed calls, voicemails. I ignored most of them, but read through some of the texts. My stepmom had apparently tried to stop the grocery pickup, but since I'd arranged everything through my accounts with my payment information, the stores wouldn't let her cancel the cancellations. The food had been picked up Wednesday evening, and they'd refunded my card. From what I pieced together from the messages, my stepmom had spent Wednesday night and Thursday morning calling everyone, trying to borrow money or food, explaining that there'd been a family emergency. Some people brought dishes, but it wasn't enough for the 15 people they'd invited. Dad had apparently gone to the store Thursday morning and maxed out their credit card buying last-minute supplies, but they couldn't afford the quality or quantity they'd planned on. The dinner was a disaster. Multiple people texted asking what happened, why I wasn't there. My stepmom had told some story about me having a crisis and abandoning the family. A couple of cousins who knew me better didn't buy it and started asking questions. The truth came out, or at least parts of it. Now half the extended family was angry at my stepmom for driving me away, and the other half thought I was a vindictive brat who ruined Thanksgiving over a petty argument. My girlfriend and I ended up going to a restaurant that was open on Thanksgiving. The meal was great, the company was better, and I didn't have to deal with any passive-aggressive comments or ultimatums. It was probably the best Thanksgiving I'd had in 8 years. Update 1. It's been 4 days since Thanksgiving, and the fallout has been something else. I've had time to process everything and read through all the messages, and I figured I should update everyone on what's happened since. Friday morning, my dad called from my stepmom's phone. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. He sounded exhausted. He asked if we could talk, really talk, without my stepmom present. I agreed to meet him for coffee that afternoon at a place near my hotel. When he showed up, he looked like he'd aged 10 years. He sat down and immediately apologized. Not the half-hearted kind of apology, but a real one. He said he'd been enabling my stepmom's behavior for years, that he'd watched her treat me poorly and convinced himself it wasn't that bad, that we'd eventually work things out. He admitted that seeing me walk out made him realize how much he'd failed as a father. He explained that after I left, my stepmom had a complete meltdown. She'd spent hours trying to fix the situation, calling stores, calling relatives, panicking about the ruined Thanksgiving. When she finally accepted that the food wasn't coming back, she turned her anger on him. She blamed him for raising a disrespectful son, blamed him for not controlling me better, blamed him for not having enough money that they needed my help in the first place. Their Thanksgiving had been awful. The extended family members who showed up were confused about why there was barely any food. When the truth came out, opinions were split. My aunt, my stepmom's sister, defended her completely and spent the evening making comments about entitled millennials. But Dad's brother pulled him aside and told him straight up that his wife was out of line and that he'd lost sight of what mattered. The meal itself was apparently thrown together from whatever Dad could grab at the grocery store that morning and some dishes people brought. Instead of the feast they'd planned for, they had basic turkey, box stuffing, canned cranberry sauce, and a handful of sides. My stepmom kept making excuses about the family emergency, but people who knew the real story weren't buying it. Dad said that after everyone left, he and my stepmom had their biggest fight ever. He told her that her behavior toward me had been unacceptable, that she'd crossed a line, that she'd cost him his relationship with his son over her pride and need for control. She'd apparently doubled down at first, insisting she was just trying to establish boundaries, that I needed to respect her position in the family. But then Dad did something he'd never done before. He told her that he was choosing me, that I was his son, that I'd been helping them financially for years out of love and duty, and that if she couldn't treat me with basic respect and gratitude, then they had serious problems in their marriage. He said he actually used the word divorce. That shocked her into reality, apparently. She broke down and admitted that she'd been jealous of my relationship with Dad, that she felt like she was always competing with the memory of my mom, that my financial help made her feel inadequate and resentful. She said she'd taken out all those feelings on me, and that Wednesday's ultimatum was her trying to assert control over the one thing she thought she could control. Dad told me all of this with tears in his eyes. He said he should have addressed this years ago, should have stood up for me, should have insisted on couples counseling to deal with my stepmom's issues. He asked if I could forgive him, not her, but him, for failing me as a father. I'm not going to lie, I cried too. I told him I forgave him, but that things couldn't go back to how they were. I couldn't keep being their financial safety net while being treated like an unwelcome burden. I couldn't keep sacrificing my own peace for the sake of keeping the peace with my stepmom. He understood. We talked for almost 3 hours. I explained how years of small digs and passive-aggressive comments had built up, how exhausting it was to financially support people who couldn't even say thank you, how that Wednesday was the culmination of 8 years of disrespect. Dad listened, really listened, and didn't try to defend her or make excuses. He asked what it would take for us to rebuild our relationship. I told him I needed him to actually be my father, to stand up for me, to not let his wife mistreat me for the sake of marital harmony. I told him I was done with the financial help, at least for now, until they could sort out their situation and until I could trust that my help was actually appreciated rather than expected and resented. I also told him that any future relationship with my stepmom would require actual change on her part, not just apologies. I'd heard her apologize before for smaller things, and nothing ever changed. If she wanted me in her life, she needed to address whatever issues made her treat me the way she did. Dad agreed to everything. He said he'd already started looking into marriage counseling and that he'd told my stepmom the financial help from me was over, that they needed to figure out their budget on their own. He'd also told her that if she wanted any chance of repairing things with me, she'd need to do some serious self-reflection and probably individual therapy too. Before we parted ways, Dad handed me a check. It was for $8,000. He said he'd pulled it from their savings account, and it was payment for just a portion of what I'd contributed over the years. I tried to refuse, but he insisted. He said it wasn't about the money, but about acknowledging that I'd been giving when I shouldn't have had to, and that they'd been taking without properly appreciating it. I took the check, not because I needed the money, but because I could see it mattered to him to give it to me. Update 2. A week and a half after Thanksgiving now, and I'm back home. My girlfriend went back to her place, though we've been talking every day about everything that happened. She's been incredibly supportive through all of this. My stepmom reached out 3 days ago with a long email. No text, no call, but a carefully written email that was clearly thought out rather than dashed off in emotion. In it, she apologized without qualifications or excuses. She acknowledged specific things she'd done over the years, things I'd honestly forgotten about, which meant she'd been aware of her behavior all along. She admitted to feeling threatened by me, to resenting my relationship with Dad, to taking out her financial insecurities on me because I represented everything she felt she wasn't providing. She said she'd started seeing a therapist and that she and Dad had begun couples counseling. She wasn't asking for forgiveness or for things to go back to normal. She said she just wanted me to know that she understood why I left, why I did what I did, and that she was taking steps to become a better person and a better wife to my father. The email surprised me. It felt genuine in a way her previous apologies never had. But I'm not ready to respond yet. I might never be. That's something I'm working through. Dad and I have been talking regularly. He's kept me updated on their counseling sessions without betraying confidence, just letting me know they're making progress. Their financial situation is apparently dire without my monthly contributions, which has been a wake-up call for both of them. They've had to make serious budget cuts, and my stepmom has started working part-time at a local boutique to bring in extra income. I've been dealing with extended family fallout too. My aunt, my stepmom's sister, sent me a nasty message calling me selfish and cruel, saying family doesn't abandon family over small disagreements. I blocked her, but Dad's brother reached out to tell me he was proud of me for standing up for myself, that he'd watched my stepmom's behavior at family events for years and was glad someone finally called her out. A couple of cousins have reached out too, mostly supportive, some confused. I've had to explain the situation multiple times, but I've been honest about it. I'm done protecting my stepmom's image for the sake of family harmony. The most unexpected thing happened yesterday. My girlfriend told me that watching how I handled the situation, how I set boundaries and stood up for myself even when it was hard, made her realize how serious she was about our relationship. She said she could see herself building a life with someone who had that kind of backbone and integrity. We've started talking about moving in together. As for my dad and stepmom, I don't know what the future holds. Dad and I are rebuilding slowly. My stepmom is doing the work she needs to do. Maybe one day we'll have some kind of relationship, but it won't be the one we had before, and it won't be one where I'm expected to subsidize their life while accepting mistreatment. People have asked if I regret canceling the groceries, if I think I went too far. Honestly, no. Could I have handled it differently? Probably. But years of small resentments and disrespect built up to that moment, and my stepmom's ultimatum was the match that lit the fuse. She told me to leave, and I did. She just didn't expect me to take the food I'd paid for with me. Sometimes you have to make a dramatic gesture to make people understand you're serious. Sometimes you have to be willing to walk away from the table to show that you won't accept scraps. And sometimes burning a bridge is necessary to stop yourself from crossing it anymore. I'm at peace with what I did. My relationship with my father is healing, and I learned that standing up for yourself, even when it costs you, is worth it in the end. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us.